Hello, my name is Margie Bryant and welcome. And today's live is inspired about listening to John C. Maxwell, who is one of the world's leading leadership experts. He's written an amazing amount of books, which is translated into 50 languages, and I think he's written about 30 million books, which is an extraordinary amount of books on leadership. And I was inspired today by listening to his book called Leadershift, which is different from leadership, and it's certainly different from management. And he was talking about how in this fast-paced society, really we have to look differently at leaders and be different as leaders. And the way to do that is through being flexible and being adaptable and really embracing some key principles which he outlined in his book. And I'd like to share those with you today. He gave some beautiful analogies of where we used to think that things were fast-paced or that if only things could slow down. Well, if you're going to think about things slowing down, or if you think this is fast-paced, it's only going to get faster, and you're going to be run over if you think you're going to wait for things to slow down. And the emphasis that he put onto this book in leadership is basically, we used to revere people being at the top, being at the CEO, and really you had to go up a corporate ladder and corporate climb. That is now shifting enormously, perhaps not in traditional workplaces and workspaces, but perhaps it needs to. Wouldn't it be better if we think about leaders as creating that ladder for everybody, not just someone at the top? Wouldn't it be enormously valuable if we're developing greater leaders right throughout any organization? And that's all about the principles of the Leadershift. And I just found it inspiring, and I just loved many of the simple examples that he gave throughout the book. And he talked a lot about people's attitude. And of course, you must have a positive attitude, an ever-changing attitude, one that is prepared to shift gears. So if you always stayed in gear 1, if you stayed rigid and only got into gear 2, then if you never got out of gear 2, you couldn't get into 3 or to 4 or even into overdrive. And that's where really the great benefits happen. If you are able to get through those gear changes and shift gears in flow and intentionally. And it's primarily, he said, keep things real. One is, R is for relationships, E is for equipping people, A is for attitude, which I just mentioned, and L is for that leaders, developing other leaders and inspiring them to go beyond their limiting beliefs. So many people feel fixed in their mindset, they have their programming back which happened in their childhood, and they forget that they can actually move and be someone completely different. It doesn't have to landlock where you're going to end up in your life. And he also mentioned perhaps there should be a change in emphasis away from goals, being goals orientated, to being growth orientated. Instead of achieving your values, develop your values. Instead of focusing on status, focus on stretching yourself. How can you stretch your mind a little bit further? And instead of thinking about all the privileges and all the honors that you can have by being a CEO, how about honoring serving other people? How many people have you served today? And changing the emphasis away from being a teacher, putting the emphasis more on who is the student and being the student. And instead of thinking in our mindset that we've arrived somewhere, how about we target where we're going? and what the growth is going to be. So growth is the highest reward, is not what we get from it, but what we become in our lives. And that's the key to leader shift. Growth is the only guarantee that we're going to have a different tomorrow by changing something, and have a better tomorrow by changing something that we're doing today. And that usually ends up in our habits. So make the shift away from goal-orientated to being growth-orientated, and embrace change. Embrace change. He was saying, steer away from having a fixed mindset, which so many people have. They think, oh, I've always been this way, this is me. And believe that intelligence and your intelligence can be developed. And rather than avoiding challenge and feeling safe and feeling comfortable, we're almost uncomfortable in our comfortableness. And we need to embrace challenges to grow. So all of our best growth is going to be outside our comfort zone. And people give up so easily, and rather look at what are the setbacks and face them, and reach for higher achievements in your life, and think about how you can stretch yourself and be at your full potential. I just loved the book. It's having that teachable spirit, and he gave simple analogies of preparing your soil, harvesting the soil, planting the seed, all of those simple analogies, and being an avid gardener. I love those analogies. Many people want to harvest their crops well before they've actually planted enough seeds or watered or tended them. And it's an intentional process, and we're needing to really fail early, fail often, but we're always failing forward if we have that mindset, and have a mindset of being a catalyst for your own transformation, and then it would inspire others to have their own transformation too. So he was saying, do not be afraid of failure, and others are always going to be ahead of you, and you've just got to affirm where you are at and swim in your own lane, and don't compare yourself to others. It's so easy to think of somebody else and think about where they're at, and failure is really your enemy. Think about how you're growing through your failures, and really value yourself and value how you value and add value to others. So it was a wonderful book, and I just loved it, and I thought I would bring the benefits of what it was to you. And I have a lot of these wisdoms in a private Facebook group that I have, and I'd love to add you in to that group. Just message me and I'd be happy to add you if you'd love to learn much more about leadership and leaders and all sorts of other tips which were beneficial to your life. Love life and live it in the greatest happiness and health, and I hope you're having a simply awesome day. And this particular book, John C. Maxwell, is called Leader Shift.